We are at the Sustainable Energy for All Forum 2018 at Lisbon, and it gives me great pleasure to introduce to everyone this panel. We are having a conversation on one of the very pertinent issues at this point in energy access, which is to reach, how do you reach the last 600 million people who are not likely to be reached by business as usual models. And so we are going to start with one business model, which is a women-centric business model of expanding energy access to the last mile, to the most difficult locations. And I'm very proud to introduce to you Juliet, who is working in Uganda with a community-based organization. She runs an organization and works in remote areas of Uganda. So welcome, Juliet. And tell us about your business and about how you got into it.
Okay. Thank you very much. So Juliet Gibbs, like she said, and I will be talking about two programs. So first, I have New Foundation, which is Ndiba Empowering Women. It's an organization that I started to enable women to have access to saving and credit options. And so we started with a group of 30 women in the village where I was born and raised, because we very well know that financial access remains a challenge in most of the rural areas in Africa, and the financial institutions are not going there anytime soon. Yeah, so with a group of 30 women, apparently we started by having them do savings, and they would deposit money in one of the commercial banks. But then we realized the motivation was too low because, I mean, they had no relationship with the commercial bank. Like, they are so distant to them and very intimidating. And so we introduced a model which is community managed microfinancing, and that's VSLAs. So the women would save money in the box and lend to each other at an interest rate. They share the dividends themselves at the end of the cycle. And like in just a few weeks, another group of 36 women came excited, and they wanted to also get a box. So it's like the news, you know, spread like a fire. And as I speak now, we are having over 140 groups of about 36 women. And yeah, they save money and lend to each other. So once this was set up, and we realized that the groups were actually performing well, you know, like at the end of the cycle, no woman is thinking of, you know, giving way to another to come in. Yeah, so then we realized this is a channel of other interventions. And one of the major challenges, as much as the women were having their money saved, was at the end of the cycle, we did a calculation, and there were other, like, access to renewable energy. So first, a lady will be giving a testimony that, you know, by participating in a savings group, I was able to borrow money to buy food for the famine season. But at the same time, you realize that the cost of biomass, firewood for cooking, is almost twice. And it's like, in the rural area, I'd never thought this is real. But like, if she bought maybe flour for a meal at about $1, then she needs biomass of like close to twice. And like, it's like you can't find food and you fail to cook it. So it's at that point that I began thinking of solutions, partnerships that I could work with to address this. And of course, the other one is it was lighting, and we all know that women are at the forefront of that. We did a simple calculation of how much kerosene a woman purchases every day, and it came to, you know, like an equivalent of what she would borrow to start a business. And this is year in, year out. And so it just made sense that they needed access to, you know, solutions. But then the other challenge is, because they have really competing demands, then it was difficult for us to, you know, extend lanterns, solar lanterns to them for cash. So it's at that point that ENVenture comes my way, and they were ready to extend a credit, soft loan of $2,000. And like, seems like small, but small monies can do great things. Yes, and it's not really small. So we started like an intervention of purchasing lanterns. Of course, ENVenture also went an extra mile to link us with the different partners. So like the negotiations and working with those partners who are distributing like the certified products was much easier. Sometimes they delivered before we made the payment. Yeah, so like we started extending our credit, like for even products that cost about $10. They don't have the cash, they can't afford the cash. So, but then they are willing to make the payment maybe in a couple of weeks. And then maybe towards the end, the group can step in to give them a bit of credit. So, yeah, so we've moved on from that point.
Thank you, Juliet. I think it's an excellent example of what a homegrown initiative can do with a little bit of support from outside. And it's interesting that we're not really talking about huge amounts of money. We're just talking about a little bit of that startup capital and a lot of input, I think other kinds of input which may actually be more valuable than the finance itself. So let me ask you, Aneri, what is that other input that you provide that makes this all work, that makes it all come together?
Thank you. So I'm the founder of ENVenture, and ENVenture's mission is to really support rural entrepreneurs like Juliet to get access to the opportunities and to the financing to create these kinds of homegrown solutions in their communities. In Uganda, most of the energy companies that are there are pretty much founded by foreigners who are coming in, raising like millions of dollars of capital in creating peri-urban and urban kind of markets, and not really addressing the really rural places where Juliet's working. So with a small loan, we were able to unlock that opportunity for rural entrepreneurs who are denied that kind of financing from local banks. But what's also really great is it's not just the money, it's also the opportunities. So we pair them with business experts. So she had an investment banker from London actually come and support her on her business for 3 months. And then we also facilitated a Business 101 boot camp that Juliet attended and learned more about the business nuts and bolts to really grow from like a seed to eventually a small medium enterprise. And then we also developed fintech because most of these entrepreneurs are in rural places, they don't have computers, their sales agents are out in the field, so everything's done on pen and paper. So we really saw a huge need for better financial statements and record keeping, because it's not just the lack of money, it's like the lack of formalization that also prevents them from getting that money. So by providing all these different kinds of ecosystem service opportunities, that's how we're trying to channel this growth of actual small medium enterprises in these rural places.
Thank you, Aneri. It's also interesting that it's a two-way process, what you're creating. It's not just for the group, but it's also educating the people outside in the outside world about just the fact that these issues exist and are pertinent and that they can be solved if we work together. So that I think that bridge building is also a very important role that you play. In our experience in Indonesia, we've brought a lot of, where we're working with women entrepreneurs, we brought a lot of college students who are very tech savvy to come and live with these women for a short while, supporting them in just about everything they do, but also helping them in terms of marketing. And then they go back and take these stories to their colleges, to their friends, to their peers, and the message really spreads. So like I said, I think it's a two-way process that is really good. Let me move to another aspect of this whole this whole spectrum of activities. So, Katherine, you're also working in several countries, and your business model is very exciting in that it deals with really building leadership. So it's, of course, providing energy access, but it's also building leadership and at all levels, right up to the boardroom. So let's hear from you.
So my name is Katherine Lucey. I'm the founder CEO of Solar Sister, which is working in sub-Saharan Africa in 2 countries. We're in Nigeria and Tanzania, working with a network of women entrepreneurs. And Solar Sister reaches out to women in rural areas who are interested in starting businesses to bring clean energy to their communities. And we provide them with a suite of services, which is business training, technical training, and soft skills, leadership and agency training, so that they have an entire support system, both from the training as well as over time, because there's a network of women. They come together and provide each other with peer support as well. And it's this peer support that I think is so important, because it carries them through. Being an entrepreneur anywhere in the world is probably one of the toughest things to be, and to try to be an entrepreneur in a rural community that has seasonality and access issues and lack of support is the toughest. And so to have this peer network of support that gets you through the tough seasons, gives encouragement, helps you problem solve, is what really is the strength of the Solar Sister Network. And I think that extends as well up through our organization. We happen to be a women-led organization, and everyone from the board to the senior executives down through we have a few solar brothers, but we have mostly women within the organization. And again, it's that peer support. One of the things that we're a part of is the People-Centered Accelerator. And through the People-Centered Accelerator, we get support from people like are on this panel here to help us understand the issues that we're facing are not our issues alone, but they're issues that faced by all of us. And we give each other encouragement and solutions and problem solving. We challenge each other to be able to address the issues that we encounter as we're trying to resolve bringing energy access to the last mile for the 600 million or so that will not be reached. Even if we're successful with grid extensions and mini grids, there still is a distributed generation solution that is going to be necessary.
Thanks, Katherine. I think that brings us sort of beautifully to the next level of discussion, that we're all doing things individually, but we've come together and we are at this forum because we do want to do things together. And most importantly, we want to do it in a way that amplifies all our actions. If you're doing 600 entrepreneurs, we need to be doing the 6,000 and many more. So I am going to ask Carlos now the difficult question of the People-Centered Accelerator. So if you can tell us a little bit about it, what the objectives are, and also practical actions, involvement, engagement in this whole sector of gender, but also social inclusion.
Thank you, Soma. Well, I think it's a pleasure to be here with you guys. I think it's Katherine, you've been highlighting most of the important elements of the People-Centered Accelerator. It is quite exciting. It's an exciting space for us all to be. It helps us complementing our skills, our capacities. It helps also strengthening the weaknesses that we have within our own organizations and in a sector that is still far from where we want the sector to be in terms of enabling the change that we want to see, right? The People-Centered Accelerator was born some months ago. It was last year, and we met each other. We basically met each other face to face in Iceland. It's a great moment to actually know each other. I think it basically brought down some of the walls between different organizations and help us to actually build up trust and confidence in talking from different aspects and angles from the same sector. Like Practical Action is an NGO, and we work a lot with civil society on the ground, and we have experience with the private sector side. But I think the element of having partners working on the private sector with a gender lens, with a purple lens, helps a lot. Practical Action also to understand how to play that role, and I think the People-Centered Accelerator is that space that is catalyzing that change, and I truly believe this can actually start changing things to the exterior, but also to the interior of the organizations. I mean, within Practical Action, I have to say that the organization is more seriously, I mean, it's always been serious about gender, but now we are taking steps into the how to integrate gender more meaningfully, how to actually, like work on that direction. So I think the People-Centered Accelerator's main remits are on finding ways to bring the needed finance, the needed policies and regulations, and the needed enabling environment into the last mile, where the people we usually deal with are, in most of the cases, women, but also people who are usually not receiving the needed attention that they should, right? And I think there is that tension between where the sector is moving and where we think the sector should be moving in terms of who is getting that finance, and what kind of private sector we want to see growing. In terms of Practical Action, yes, you're right. I mean, we've been working on the energy sector for over the last 45 years. There are a couple of very nice examples with gender on the center of the programmatic or on the programmatic stuff. One of which is very much in relationship with what our colleague in the beginning was saying on the VLS, the women groups in Sudan, that I want to highlight now here, which is when we think markets are not working, it is because we actually need to get people working together. And we did that with 150,000 women. We established together with them one association that covered 83 associations in Sudan to finally get enough demand to change the rules of the supply side. So I think there are many examples that we can use to convince people who are still unconvinced about the key role of gender in the energy sector, and I think People-Centered Accelerator is a great space to do that. Thank you.
Thanks, Carlos. I think Practical Action itself is a great example of how they have moved in terms of addressing gender from a mainstreaming approach to now, correct me if I'm wrong, but from there to now where it's integral part of everything, but it's also looked at in a very transformatory way. So you're not looking at gender just to benefit women, but you're looking at to empowering them, to changing relations, to changing the way the society operates, and using that as an instrument for development. So that is great. The second point I want to make is that I find a huge change in the last 3 to 4 years in the fact that a large number of organizations, private sector organizations, are beginning to employ women because it makes business sense. And I'm very happy to see here here at the forum, Simpa Networks, who I met just a couple of months back, and they were wanting to know about gender. And now I find Piyush told me yesterday that they have actually a 35% women, and they're doing it purely from a business commercial point of view. Then there is Pollinate Energy and several others. So it is becoming a movement, that's for sure. But just coming back to the accelerator, I quickly want to go through all of us and ask, we've talked about convincing about this model. So who are we trying to convince, and what is it that is required to convince them? I mean, what is that one thing that's required? And Juliet, from you, I want to ask, what do you need from this forum? What do you want to go back with that will help you grow your business? Yeah, we go with you.
Okay. From this conference, of course, one of the things is there have been lots of discussions. There have been lots of organizations that are in this space, and there's a lot to learn. There are some things we've not yet tried that I want to now get back. Maybe I may not interact with each of the institutions, but for those that I've known are working with women, like I've now just known, she's somewhere close to Uganda. So I would like to know what they are doing different, and maybe I copy a leaf from that. But also one of the major limiting factors to stretch like the last mile. I was opportuned to have Aneri come to one of the mountain areas we went, and it's like the car couldn't go beyond the point. And so we just had to walk up the mountain. It had rained. So reaching the last mile is costly. But like that is where this is most needed. So like we need support to stretch and go that far and not leaving anybody behind.
Absolutely, thank you. I like that you emphasize the learning from each other bit. You know, I mean, SEforALL can bring us together. They can do so much, but after that, we have to make that work and you know, learn from each other. So that's a very good, I think, input for the accelerator. Aneri?
Yeah, I think it's just really important that, I mean, the reason it's called People-Centered Accelerator is because people are the ones who are working on this problem, not the technologies. You need to have a workforce that's educated and creating jobs in this space, because energy is not necessarily going to get people out of poverty. Jobs are going to get people out of poverty. So how do we go about creating those energy jobs? So Juliet's hiring like dozens of women in our community who now have like income to sell clean energy, and how do we replicate that so that local entrepreneurs are hiring people, are creating opportunities in the villages so people aren't fleeing the villages to go to the cities to find work, because clearly the need for energy is so strong that if there's enough people working on it, it can be done. So that's really where I think the strength of the People-Centered Accelerator is really how do we do that workforce development.
So actually, I'm going to throw the question back at you. How do we do that?
Well, I think it starts with as the accelerator. Well, I think it's also looking to find leaders. So one kind of missing piece of talking about energy and gender is that it's not just about empowering women, but it's about empowering women leaders. Like, Juliet is like a leader in her community. Like, I mean, if you see her, like 1,000 people like come to hear her speak. Like, that's the kinds of people we need to be financing, providing opportunities to, and giving them the chance to, you know, create like hundreds of jobs in those areas. So the more women leaders that are local, that the People-Centered Accelerator can bring into the fold and empower. And the leadership doesn't have to be like even energy focused. It can be just like standard leadership curriculum that most of them are denied because they just don't have the opportunities to even get those kinds of trainings. I mean, in the States, they're like super costly. I can't even afford an executive coach, but lots of leaders do, right? So how do we create those kinds of programs? And I think that can really move the needle.
Thank you. I agree, leadership and agency is central to anything that you do. I mean, even for your energy business, that's required, because at the end of the day, you have to go to the next county and negotiate with whoever and, you know, be able to sell. So even for that, I think that's definitely an area of focus, I think, for the accelerator. I'm just going to pass the same question to Katherine and then to Carlos.
I think keeping at the center of things, remembering that for energy, that it is a gender issue, that women are more than just the beneficiaries of energy, but more importantly, they are the key that will unlock energy access for all, and remembering that that is so central so that we can keep it at the forefront of all that we do, and make sure that as we're developing leaders and opportunities, that women will benefit from that leadership and opportunity, and that they will then be, the power of the women will be unlocked to really bring that to their communities.
Sorry. Yeah, from my side, what I will wish the People-Centered Accelerator to become or to deliver is, you know, like, we have fantastic research and products or deliverables produced by Solar Sister or ENERGIA or other partners in the space, and the organizations have good recognition, okay, and create you know, like, kind of milestones in the space, but we need to actually collect all that information, all that data, all that evidence, and make People-Centered Accelerator to become kind of a light in the horizon where everybody go and take that information as the, you know, as the definitive data, as a space, you know, like a space where that represents the solution that we need to bring. I like the idea of having champions or leaders, but People-Centered Accelerator should be a leader by itself. like a kind of a think tank where we can create that data. Or we can compile the data that exists already and make people who are unconvinced to become convinced about a fact that we are convinced about.
So just about also being people-centered, in my opinion, would be like, we are not going to bring to people solutions that we've sat in like a laboratory and, come up with innovations, but like where we've engaged the people that actually are going to use them.
Thank you. From lab to land, leadership, bucket of tools that will work, and most importantly, keeping women and people at the center of everything that we do. So I think these are the key messages that are coming out of this discussion. Thank you, everyone. Juliet, Aneri, Katherine, Carlos, thank you.
Thank you.